поговорить с вами и чтобы еще показать. И мы понимаем, что все то, что вы уже сейчас увидели, наверняка вам пригодится, и вы что-то попробуете у себя со своими студентами, со своими учениками. И вот что пришло в голову, я помню прекрасно, когда мы проводили раньше наши школы Лонгман, потом школы Пирсон, были совершенно замечательные темы, связанные с культурой стран изучаемого языка. И поэтому решили мы возобновить эту традицию. И помня о том, что Роб Дин всегда делал эту тему совершенно потрясающе интересно, мы решили обратиться к нему еще раз с такой просьбой. Тем более, что последний раз в его материале, этот материал был подготовлен очень давно, уже 6 лет назад. Поэтому наверняка мы с вами услышим что-то интересное, новое и увлекательное. И я надеюсь, все мы сейчас получим удовольствие. Я передаю микрофон Робу Дину, и мы продолжаем работу.
Thank you very much indeed. Спасибо большое. Спасибо. Okay, hello again. Welcome back. Are you feeling refreshed? Did you manage to get a coffee or something? Excellent. That's good to know. That's good to know. Okay, this second session then, I think you'll agree, has a rather unusual title. You can tell a lot about a country by its sausages. Is this true? Well, we might find out a bit later on. In case it's a bit mysterious at the moment, just bear with me, because we will be mentioning sausages towards the end of my session. So bear with me until then. This is a session that does not involve singing, it does not involve jumping up and down or clapping your hands or stamping your feet. But if you want to do any of those things, that's absolutely fine. I don't mind. All right, but we're talking about culture. About culture, and in the short time that I have, it's going to be a fairly brief look at the subject. It's going to be an awareness raiser as much as anything. So not too much in the way of methodology, not necessarily a lot of classroom activities, but I hope some interesting thoughts and ideas that will benefit you personally and things that you will be able to pass on to your students. But culture, it's a word we use a lot, isn't it? It's a very frequent word, actually, is culture. But what does it really mean? I'd like to begin with the first activity, actually, and making this interactive. I've taken the definition of culture, which I found in the dictionary, and as you can see, I've blanked out some of the words. So this is an activity you could use with your students, and we'll stick with those two teams again, Team 1 and Team... Very good, you remember. So Team A, would you like to start? What do you think the first word is, beginning with C? The customs, well done, yeah, 1 point, okay. And Team 1, what begins with B? Beliefs, very good indeed. Okay, what do you think the next one is, with M? Music, excellent. Literature, this is going well. And all the other products of... Human, that's the word I want. Thought, made by a particular group of... At a particular time, exactly. A definition I'd like to use as a starting point. Now, it's massive. We've got literature, we've got music, we've got beliefs, we've got art, and we've got 40 minutes. So really, I'm going to be focusing primarily here on aspects of language and its relation with culture. After all, we are language teachers. So in the short time we have, what I'll be looking at, first of all, is the importance of culture, why we perhaps need to consider culture while we're teaching language, thinking about whose culture should we cover in our classrooms. We'll be looking at aspects of culture relating to places, people and customs, culture and language, as I mentioned earlier on, and culture and sausages. So, why is culture important? Or why do I think culture is important while we're teaching language? Well, first of all, language and culture sometimes cannot be separated. For instance, if you take certain words in certain languages, they don't translate into other languages. So the only way we can get to the meaning is to find out what these words mean in terms of the culture that gave rise to them. I have a couple of examples you'll be familiar with. Marshrutka. It doesn't translate into English. Why? Because in English-speaking countries there is no such thing as a marshrutka. Yes, there's a minibus. Yes, there are taxis. But we don't have exactly the same thing that exists here in Russia. Piroshki, very often translated as pies. But they're not. They're piroshki. They're different from pies. Pies in an English-speaking context are not the same. So if we want to know what these words really mean, we delve into aspects of culture to find out, in the case of piroshki, a little bit about the culture of cooking in Russian society. So that's the first thing. We can't separate culture and language sometimes. Another reason, I think, is quite obvious, that increasingly nowadays we are communicating with people from different cultures for pleasure, if we go on holiday, for business, and it's not just face-to-face either. It's through mediums such as Skype, the internet, electronic communication. For example, is Russia an English-speaking country? It is. Look at everybody in this room. I'm staying in a hotel not far from here, and their English is better than mine. So Russia is an English-speaking country. Might not be everybody's first language, but it's an English-speaking country. So there is a blur, I think, nowadays between the wider world and English-speaking countries. And then, of course, there's what I'm going to do today, the culture of the teacher. Now, you might argue that you share the same culture as your students, so what is there to talk about? You've been on the planet longer than your students. You've had different cultural experiences. You've been to different places. You've seen different things. So, still, things worth sharing. Now, as I'm British, I'm going to share with you aspects of British culture today. Now, I want to be very clear here that English language and British culture are not the only combination. Let's bear in mind that culture can mean anything, as we said at the very beginning, relating to any group of people. But as I'm an expert on things British, that's going to be one of the themes of what follows. So I wonder what you think of when you think of Britain. What cultural phenomena come into your mind? What is British culture? Now, there's a few ideas on the screen here, very popular ideas, but what I'd like you to do for 66 seconds is, with the person next to you, think of 3 things that you consider to be typically British. Now, there can be physical things, such as some of the ideas on the screen, if you want, or there can be characteristics. Okay? So how many seconds did I say? 66 seconds, all right, starts now. The person next to you. 3 things you think of when you think of Britain. What's British culture to you? Okay, I'm going to stop you there, so hold those thoughts. We're going to come back to those a little bit later in the session. But there is another reason, I think, why including the study of culture is important. I believe that when you study another culture, it heightens your own awareness of your own culture. Would you agree? Yeah? It's a bit like learning another language. When you learn another language, you suddenly become more aware of your own language, don't you? So, oh wow, in English they do it that way, and that's different from the way we do it in the Russian language. So culture can work in just the same way. And a quote I'd like to share with you from this gentleman. Any idea who this is? You might need a clue. He was famous because he wrote this. Kipling, yes. Kipling said that you cannot understand your own culture if it's the only culture you know. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. So let's think about our own culture, or let's go into the classroom and let our students think about their own culture. We're talking a little bit here about culture, we're talking about customs, we're talking about places, we're talking about systems. And I believe that when we're doing any kind of study, every journey starts from home. So where is home for this? I'd say home is the classroom. And if we say to the students, today we're going to talk about school, how do you think they're going to react? Oh no, school, we hate school. Don't believe a word of it, honestly. A lot of kids say this because it's not cool to admit that they like school. They'll never admit it, but they spend a lot of their lives there. There's lots of positive things about school, and there's a lot they can learn about school. I'm going to show you a short video clip at this stage. By the way, how do your students react to videos? Yeah, okay. A short video clip. This is at level A2. It's from something called Culture Close-Up. And what we're going to see is a very brief resume of what school is like in Britain. Okay? So as you watch this, see how many differences you can spot between the British system and the system here in Russia. I'm only going to show you a short part of it because the time is ticking away.
Schools.
Hi, my name is Jack. I'm 13 years old. This is my school. In England, we normally go to primary school from 4 to 11. Then, we go to secondary school until we are 16. I'm in year 9 at secondary school.
Getting to school.
I start school at 9 o'clock. A lot of my friends go to school by bus. Some walk to school, and some go to school by car. The bus is good. You can talk to your friends.
Registration.
Our first class is at 9 o'clock. This is registration. In registration, my teacher can see who is at school and who isn't. Sometimes a few kids aren't at school because they are ill. This is usually in the winter.
Morning lessons.
After registration, we have our first lesson. A lesson is 35 minutes.
Let's pause it there. There is plenty more to watch. Any differences immediately jump out at you, looking at that and compared to what you're familiar with in Russian school? Lesson starting time. What time do they start here? 8:30. Ouch. 8 o'clock even. Whoa, that's horrendous. Fancy, so that means some kids have to get up at 6:30? Wow, that sounds pretty horrendous, doesn't it? To me at least. Any other differences you noticed? Registration. Do you not have registration period in class here? No? So the idea here, quite simply, is raising awareness. It works in two ways. So the kids are learning a little bit about school in another country. They're reflecting on their own situation. And obviously with a piece of video material like that, they're developing their language skills, their receptive skills in that particular instance. So comparison. Comparison's a powerful thing. I've spent a long time living outside the UK, and the more time I've spent away from the UK, the more I've learned about the UK. It might sound very strange. For example, I miss certain things, as you can probably imagine. I miss British television. I live in Poland, and yes, I do get some British TV, but only a few selected lowlights, not highlights, I have to say. I miss British pubs. Honestly, you will see British pubs all over the world, but none of them are real. I have an advert here. Picked it up in the hotel. British pub, it says. And guess what it's called? British Queen. Rather dubious name, if you ask me. And then it tells you all about the beer they sell. Budweiser, Heineken, Erdinger, and something Russian, I can't read it. British pub? I don't think so. I miss my family, obviously, and a lot of people think I'm crazy for living so far away from my family in the UK. I miss driving on the correct side of the road. Seriously. I think there's a problem here. I think everybody needs to move to the other side. So we're all in line together. And I miss English bookshops. We don't really have quite the range of stuff in bookshops in Poland as we have in London, for example. But there are things I like about being away. I like the fact that bars never seem to close abroad. In Britain, they tend to close, even though the law has changed, they tend to close at 11 o'clock. Sometimes the weather's better. Not always, but different weather, let's say. It's much easier to travel. We don't have to cross the sea to go somewhere. I can get in my car, and if I want, I can drive to Germany without stopping. Try doing that from Britain. I love trying new food. Well, most new food anyway. I was once offered guinea pig to eat in Peru. That wasn't a nice experience. And I do enjoy hearing, if not actually trying to learn bits and pieces of new languages. So something you can do with your students, get them to imagine they're leaving Russia. What would they miss? What would they like about being away? And it's something I could probably ask you, and you'd probably come up with a very long list of ideas. So this idea of comparison. Comparison between what we're familiar with and comparison with a new culture, a new place. And comparison here between two English-speaking countries. Two English-speaking countries that are presumably, or should I say, very often said to be divided by a common language. A little quiz for you. Do you like quizzes? Okay, a little quiz. All right. Which of these two countries does this apply to? So homes in this country waste 20% of all the food they buy. The UK or the USA? It is, in fact, the UK. There we are. All right, question number 2. Let's keep going then. In this country, you can learn to drive at the age of 17. It is the UK, yes. Yeah. In the USA, younger or older? 16. That's terrifying. Mind you, it's easy because in the USA, all the roads are straight. So there's less chance of having a crash. All right. In this country, 1 in 8 people have been employed by McDonald's at some time. Exactly. I think the UK might be catching up. You never know. All right. Here's another one. In this country, people get less holiday time from work. So which of the two? Yeah, I was horrified to learn that some Americans only get 2 weeks paid holiday per year. What about in Russia? 4 weeks. That's better, isn't it? That's a bit more like it. Okay, here's another one. In this country, easy one, nobody is further than 120 kilometres from the sea. Yeah, it's got to be the UK, yeah. Okay, I think there are people in the USA who've never seen the sea, and it's easy to realise. There are probably people in Russia, in central Russia, who haven't seen the sea. Would you agree? Possible, isn't it? Huge country. In this country, it was legal, this is bizarre, isn't it, until 1913 to send children through the post. Seriously. Which country? The USA, yeah. Would Brits do that? Probably. Okay, and finally, the last one. In this country, 70% of households have both parents in employment. It's the USA, actually. The USA, in the UK, it's slightly lower. So, little quiz questions, little topics. They're nothing that are going to change the world, but it's nice to trickle in little bits of information such that when students do end up having contact with these other cultures, they know a bit about it. These, incidentally, where do you think I got the information from? The internet. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Because everything's on the internet now, isn't it? Which is great. But actually, on this occasion, I didn't get them from the internet. They all came from the course that Vaughan was talking about earlier on. And in case any of this information is not true, he's the man to blame. You'll find throughout the course these little boxes with cultural reference to the UK and the USA. So fascinating facts working in tandem with language development. One thing I've done incidentally with students, and I was going to do it with you, but I think the time's against us. It was just after the summer holidays, the students came back and none of them wanted to do any work. It was obvious because they started asking me lots of interesting questions about the summer. Where did you go? What did you do? Who did you meet? What did you eat? What did you drink? And I suddenly got the idea that perhaps what we could do was a bit of a quiz. So I set the kids together, initially should I say alone, to think about where they were for the summer and to write down quiz questions. We then had a class quiz based upon where they'd been for their holidays. And at the time, I thought it was just one of those ways of filling in blank time where they didn't want to do any work. But on reflection, what we were doing, in fact, was heightening their cultural awareness in a student-centred way. They were sharing with each other, through quiz material, like the stuff we've just seen, what they've been doing over their summer holidays in different places, with different people, eating different things, and having different activities. Culture and language was the main title of this session. And culture and language, as I said earlier on, are often inseparable. Culture is also a very strong influence on the way we communicate. For example, in Russia, if you go to one of these places, and you want to know if there are any tickets available, you might go to the window and in your best Russian you might say this. Can you say it for me? Есть билеты. Is that good? Okay. And if for some reason the lady or the man behind the counter hasn't got any tickets, the answer would be Нет. I've heard that a few times, although less commonly just recently. Let me tell you, the immigration people at the airport yesterday were fantastic. For a start, they were beautiful and smiley. They were friendly and they wished me a happy stay in Russia. That's a big improvement. So customer service, it's on the up. Anyway, in this particular situation, this is just Russia. It's direct. It's like Poland. If you go to a kiosk in Poland, just on bilety, nie. Just the same. It's not rude, it's just the way it is. But if you are in Britain, and if you are in a similar situation, you might go to the window and say, do you have any tickets? What would the answer be? I'm really sorry, I've just sold the last one. A nice young lady bought it, she's going to travel to the city centre. But if you go down the road, there's another kiosk, they've got some tickets there. They're open till 7, just opposite the bread shop, round the corner from the church. I think they're still open. You'll see it, it's the one with the... And the person behind the counter gives their life story. And the foreign student who's visiting walks away thinking, Brits are crazy. We are indirect. We tend to speak in code sometimes. And the language we use doesn't always match what it actually means. For example, if I say to you, how are you today? Your answer is almost always positive or negative? Almost always positive. It'd be something like, fine thanks, not so bad, doing well. Or in modern parlance, I'm good. Even if you're dying, you're still fine. Now that's strange, isn't it? Here's another example. Okay, Brits are renowned for discussing the weather. Nice weather. If I said that to you, would you agree with me or disagree with me? No, you wouldn't. You'd agree. You'd say, yeah, it's nice today, isn't it? Tomorrow's going to be even better. Yesterday was quite cool for the time of year, though, and I'm not so sure what it's going to do in the winter. So we discussed the weather. These two things, these two exchanges mean exactly the same thing. And before I reveal what it is, you've probably already guessed, I'd like to take you to Malaysia. I lived in Kuala Lumpur for 2 years, and I'd only been there a few days. I got into the lift of the apartment block where I lived, and a total stranger got into the lift next to me. He turned round to me and he said, have you had your lunch? And I thought, is this guy asking me out to dinner? I've never met him, but who is he? So I hesitated for a while, and I said, well, actually, no, I haven't had my lunch yet. And then he just said, I've eaten already. What was that about? Well, it took a bit of time to work out that, in fact, all these three exchanges, as I said, mean exactly the same thing. They basically mean, what do you think? Hello, do you want to talk to me? That's essentially what they mean. If you take away the language, that's the intention underneath. And this is what often causes difficulties and misunderstandings to people who go to an English-speaking country and encounter this kind of thing. This cultural code, if you like, in communication. I'd like to share with you, another video clip. And this is an even more extreme version of this in action. You're going to see a bloke at a party ask another man for a lift home in his car. Then you'll see a second version of the conversation. Why is the second version unsuccessful as a piece of communication? Have a look at this.
Compare this. Oh, hello, Tom. Could I have a lift?
Yes, certainly, sure.
With this. Oh, hello, Tom.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Uh-huh.
And you?
Oh, fine, thanks. Yes.
Yeah.
How's the new car?
Fine, fine. Very, very pleased with it.
Yeah, it's bigger than the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
much more room. Oh. Well, I mustn't stand here chatting. I've got to be going. You know, it's getting late. Oh,
Yes.
very late. Huh. So, are you going to stay long? Are you going to stay long?
What? No, not long,
It's
no.
not worth it, is it? No, I'm not. No. Tell me, you know this area. Do you know where the station is?
Yes, I drive past it.
Do you?
Quite a walk, though. Quite
Is
a
it?
walk. Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
thought it might be, yes. Damn thing. Looks like rain.
Does it?
Yes, oh, it's going to rain. Pour down. Oh, bloody weather. Well, I suppose I'd better be going off and I'll get a cab then.
Yes, I think that's your best bet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'll do then, yes. You don't, I'm sorry, you don't happen to know the number to ring for a cab, do you?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I should look it up in the book.
Oh, what a good idea, yes. Yes, I'll do that. Damned expensive, though, aren't they? Wicked. Cabs?
Yes, well, of course, petrol is expensive, isn't it?
Oh, petrol's expensive, very expensive, yeah. Huh. Hardly pays you to drive around on your own these days. Look at that weather! Oh, boring. Oh. Well, look, I'll just go off and stand outside and in the rain and try to thumb a lift.
Yeah. Oh, were you asking me for a lift?
Oh, no! Oh, no. Oh, good. Oh, I hope you didn't think that I was... Oh, no. Although if you are...
Well, I'm sorry, but I haven't got my car with me.
Why didn't you bloody say so? Ah, Frank!
Okay, you might recognise one or two of the characters in there. They went on later to form Monty Python, but that's a very old clip from the 1960s. You can tell it's old because one of them's smoking, and you don't get that on television anymore, do you? What was going wrong there? Well, again, it was this use of extremely indirect language. All of these expressions used by the chap asking for the lift were a very indirect way of actually trying to get to the point. From a DVD, you might find it on Amazon, or if you can even buy it here in Russia, I don't know. It's called How to Irritate People. Lots of cultural exchanges presented in a very entertaining way. And obviously a gross exaggeration. But still, I think there's an element of truth in what you've just seen. So culture moves around. Culture changes. Language changes. English changes. Contact with other English-speaking environments has given a shift away from expressions like, how amazing, and far more common nowadays, you're going to hear, Awesome. Which country has given us that? America, yeah, it's American English, very common in British English as well. Here are some more. See if you can spot which is most commonly used nowadays. Cheers as a way of saying goodbye, yeah. At one time, cheers was purely something you did when you're having a drink. But nowadays, a lot of people do say cheers as they're saying goodbye. Okay, what about this one? Yeah, the cats and dogs have gone. Sad news, I know. Lots of course books from the 1970s and even the 1980s would include it as authentic idiomatic English. It isn't anymore, I'm afraid. Very few people say it, if anybody. It's throwing it down or it's pouring down, far more common. Oh dear, what a pain. That's more common, what a pain. Far more common nowadays. What about, whoops, where's the cafe come from? Ignore the coffee for the time being. What about hello, hi, hey, good morning, or how do you do? How do you do is very rarely used nowadays. It is disappearing. Very, very formal at the best of times, and I think it's still used in certain very formal upper class settings, but generally no longer. And I don't know why the other one appeared when it did, but coffee with milk or cava latte? Exactly. You know, Italian is now the language of coffee. If you don't speak Italian, you ain't going to get a cup of coffee. You know that? I had this situation once. I was in Heathrow Airport. I went to one of these coffee bars. There was a young Romanian lady working there, and I said to her, could I have a coffee with milk, please? She looked at me totally blank. I said, no, coffee with milk. She said, oh, you mean latticino? I said, no, coffee with milk. Ah, frappe. No. Cappuccino, no. And she reeled all this Italian at me. And then finally she went to ask the manager. She came back and she said, you want an Americano? I said, fine, I don't mind what you call it, as long as it's coffee with milk. So language changes as culture changes, and some of these examples are about contact with other cultures and the way in which the words have moved around as the cultures have moved around. So if we're going to help our students with this, how do we go about it? I suggest not by giving them these to read. These are wonderful academic books, but they're backward looking. We're talking here about the beauty of English from the past, the beauty of English in the days of Shakespeare, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not helpful if we want our students to understand everyday English as it's spoken now. Same with these. I'm sure some of you remember these, do you? Yeah? Fond memories? Certainly some of these. I remember teaching from Streamline. What a course. At the time, it was great. And exactly as Vaughan said earlier on, it's easy to make fun of these. But nowadays, they are old courses with old methodology containing old English. So perhaps what we need to be thinking about is an up-to-date course. Up-to-date courses will contain up-to-date language. So, I asked you earlier on to think of 3 things in 66 seconds that you thought of when you thought of British culture. Now, I'm not going to ask you all individually to shout out what you had. Okay, I might be able to guess, actually. But what I would like to share with you is the results of a little bit of reading I did. I picked up a book called Watching the English. Has anybody read this? It is brilliant. I have to say, I read that and I thought, oh my goodness, the author is talking about me. Do I really do this? Yes, I do. Now, she makes it clear that she refers to the English here because she's English and she didn't want to include the Irish, the Scottish or the Welsh because she said she didn't have much first-hand knowledge of this. But nevertheless, Watching the English gave quite a lot of insight into what Britain is in terms of its culture. This was one of the things that came out. Brits are very good at moaning. They love to complain about things to each other. In a restaurant, for example, this food is awful. Never coming here again. Look at this meat. It's overcooked. I don't know how they do it. And then the waiter appears. Everything okay? Oh yes, it's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for asking. We're very nosy. Britain is a nation of what we call curtain twitchers. Do you know what a curtain twitcher is? Yeah? the curtains in the house, okay? They look around the curtain to see what's happening outside, to see who's got a new car, who's with who's wearing what, who's talking to who. We should mind our own business. Some people say we're excessively polite, and Kate Fox illustrates this in a most amusing way. She says the Brits are the only nation in the world who will apologise if you stand on their foot by accident. And in the book she describes how she put this to the test and deliberately walked around London colliding with people. And it worked. The Brits all said sorry because she collided with them. She said that some of the Mediterranean types said, be careful. And she said the Japanese were really difficult because they jumped out of the way before she managed to hit them. She didn't mention the Russians though. That will be interesting. She said Brits are very good at sarcasm. And I think that's true. We'll go into, I've done this myself, I've walked into the classroom before now on a freezing cold day where it's raining and horrible outside, and I've said, I love this weather, don't you? My students have stared at me as if I'm totally crazy. I would say it's actually quite a British thing, and even Americans get very confused with this sort of behaviour. We're an insular nation in Britain. We're surrounded by water, and I think our mentality is similar. As you probably know, on the 23rd of June, this coming, 2 months away, there is an important election to take place, a referendum to decide if Britain should leave the European Union. It's interesting, isn't it? Lots of other countries are fighting to join the European Union, and Britain's considering leaving. At the same time, she talks about tolerance, a degree of tolerance. There are lots of different nationalities living in Britain. Did you know, by the way, that the second most common language in the UK is Polish, exactly. And Poles seem to be generally quite welcomed into Britain. People get on with this. They don't necessarily all socialise together, but there's a degree of tolerance for this selection of different races that have made Britain their home. And along with immigration over the years has come new food. Did you know that curry is now the most popular takeaway food in Britain? More than fish and chips, more than pizza. Fish and chips has dropped into third place. So if you want to know what Brits take away, they take away a curry. And a good curry is very important, obviously. Which leads us to food. Now I hope you're not feeling too hungry just yet. There will be time later. All right. And national dishes. Now, it's arguable that the national dish of Britain is now curry. But I think it's still nice to bear in mind that a lot of people still eat fish and chips. It's still there. It's not gone away. What about the others then? What would you say of these three pictures remaining, the national food of Australia is? The barbecue. Barbie, absolutely, yeah. What about Ireland? And do you know what that is? Irish stew. Have you ever tried it? It's delicious. It's traditional with lamb, with meat, potatoes, vegetables. Which leaves, of course, the hamburger. I would suggest, though, that most certainly the hamburger and the sausage have become global. I think it's now quite difficult to single those out as the national dish of any one country, because I think they've become national dishes of lots of countries. And this is where the sausages come in. You've been waiting for the sausages, haven't you? Okay. I'd like to quote a chap called Pete McCarthy. He was a British comedian. He was an excellent TV presenter and a very amusing travel writer who sadly died some years ago. And he said that having travelled as much as he had, you can tell a lot about a country's culture by its sausages. Now, this might sound like I'm about to indulge in some blatant stereotyping, and perhaps I am, but we all do it occasionally, don't we? And as long as we don't really believe it, there's no harm. 6 sausages, 6 nations. The German sausage. It looks to me very well engineered. If you look at the intervals down the side of the sausage between those lines that are so beautifully cooked into the skin, there's been a lot of thinking and a lot of research gone into the design of that sausage. It's quite clear, isn't it? How about the Russian sausage? That's a big sausage. Russia's a big country. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't argue with that sausage. Okay? It's quite serious. This sausage from Spain is a passionate, spicy sausage. It's full of exotic flavours. It's wild, it's crazy, it's hot. Perhaps a bit like the Spanish climate. This Swiss sausage, on the other hand, is confused. There's all sorts of cultural references going on in there. Maybe there's bits of Italian, bits of French, bits of German, and it's all mixed up together on one plate with a sausage somewhere in the middle of it. Perhaps a bit like Switzerland itself. What about Italy? Now, I don't know about you, but that strikes me as a designer sausage. Yeah? It would look just the job riding along on a Vespa, going to have a cappuccino down a coffee bar. It's even got a designer label on it. Have you noticed? Which leaves one country I'd like to mention. Which country do you think? Yeah, what does a British sausage look like? I'll leave you to fill in the gaps. As I said, blatant, gratuitous stereotyping, but it can be a bit of fun occasionally. So, the materials I've shared with you today, some came from Pearson published materials, the video about schools from Culture Close-Up, the America and Britain cultural information from Focus, and this is a non-Pearson book, but I'm allowed to mention the fact Kate Fox is watching the English. I think you'll find it an entertaining read if you're at all interested in language and culture. So it is just about time for me to finish. I would like to share with you one final video clip of the day. Would you like a serious video clip or an amusing one? Okay, well, it might be a bit of both. Culture and languages working together. Or are they? This is set in a hotel in the south of England, where the manager is a rude, mean man who doesn't really treat his staff very well. And one of his staff, as we're about to see, is Spanish.
Manuel, there is too much butter on those trays. Okay? There is too much butter on those trays.
No, senor.
What?
Not on those tracks. No, sir. Uno, dos, tres.
No. Hay mucho burro allí.
Okay?
Hay mucho burro allí.
Ah, mantequilla.
What?
Okay? Mantequilla. Burro is I-O. Burro. I-O.
Manuel, por favor, momento.
Sí.
Nothing, dear, I'm just dealing with it.
You speak good, how you say?
English.
Mantequilla. Solamente dos.
Well, don't look at me. You're the one who's supposed to be able to speak it.
Two pieces. Two each. Arriba.
Well, I don't know why you wanted to hire him, Basil.
Because he's cheap and keen to learn, dear. And in this day and age...
But why did you say you could speak the language?
I learned classical Spanish, not the strange dialect he seems to have picked up.
Because to train a monkey.
And on that note, I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. I wish you all the best. Happy teaching, and look forward to meeting you again. If anybody has any questions at all, by the way, please feel free to come and approach me individually afterwards. Thanks very much again. All the best.
Большое спасибо за то, что вы нашли время и пришли к нам сегодня в гости. Огромное спасибо от всех нас, я бы хотела сказать нашим сегодняшним гостям, Робу Дину и Вону Джонсу, за великолепные выступления, просто потрясающие. И я хотела бы убедиться в том, что вы получите наслаждение от работы с материалами, которые сегодня были представлены. Вы можете получить ваши книги в подарок внизу, оставив свои формы заполненные, и посмотреть, что у нас есть еще. Спасибо, всего вам доброго.